Hello there, this is World News Program coming to you live on All 24 News from the capital Algiers. I'm your host, Kirifa Zachary, and up next are the top stories. 4 Palestinians are killed in yet another Zionist airstrike in Rafah. Hamas condemns it as a grave breach of the ceasefire agreement, accusing the occupation of dodging its humanitarian commitments. Also in our news, relentless Zionist aggression in the West Bank, new attacks on Nablus and Jenin leave more wounded, while the UN reveals over 40,000 Palestinians displaced since the assault began. Coming up as well, Putin and Trump talks are in the works. The Kremlin calls the discussion constructive, while Kiev reports escalating Russian attacks in the east. And later on, a game changer for Algeria's dairy industry. With a massive production capacity of 1.4 million liters per day, the country's largest dairy is now officially up and running. This and more shortly. Hello there and welcome back to the details. First off in our news, 4 Palestinians were killed and several others injured in a Zionist drone strike east of Rafah, targeting civilians and aid escorts. The Palestinian Information Center reported that 3 victims died in the initial attack, while another was killed in a separate strike on Ashoka. Hamas denounced the assault as a blatant ceasefire violation, accusing the occupation of obstructing aid deliveries and blocking the entry of essential supplies.
This crime and this violation of the ceasefire agreement is added to the occupation's denial and failure to abide by the terms of the agreement. The latest of these was the occupation's statements today not to allow the entry of mobile homes and heavy machinery, which it had committed to and informed the mediators of at the end of last week.
Still with the reaction of Hamas, it also held the occupation fully responsible for the consequences of these violations and urged mediators to enforce compliance, halt further breaches, and initiate the second phase of negotiations immediately.
While we condemn this brutal crime and all violations in implementing the agreement and the humanitarian protocol, we hold the occupation fully responsible for the repercussions of this. We also call on the mediating brothers to assume their responsibilities in obligating the Zionist enemy to fulfill all its commitments and to immediately begin negotiations for the second phase.
In the same context, the government media office in Gaza confirmed that the Zionist occupation continues to evade its commitments under the ceasefire agreement, particularly regarding humanitarian provisions. On Saturday, the head of the office stated that the occupation's refusal to allow mobile homes and heavy equipment through the Rafah crossing is a clear violation of the accord. The office urged mediators and the international community to intervene and ensure the occupation upholds its obligations. To the latest developments in the West Bank now, at least 17 Palestinians were wounded by live fire in Nablus after Zionist occupation forces stormed the old city, besieging a house amid heavy gunfire and deploying reinforcements, according to the Palestinian news agency. Meanwhile, the occupation's assault on Jenin continues for the 27th day, leaving 25 martyrs, dozens wounded, and widespread destruction. And in Tulkarem, the aggression persists for the 21st day, with North Shams camp under siege for the 8th. Forces have intensified their presence, seizing homes, displacing residents, and turning properties into military outposts. Similarly, at dawn on Sunday, Zionist occupation forces raided several West Bank cities, detaining 12 Palestinians, including a young girl in Ramallah, Beit Lahem, Kalkalia, and Al Khalil. Homes were stormed and searched, flares were fired, and clashes erupted with Palestinian resistance fighters. UNRWA reported that over 40,000 Palestinians have been displaced since the aggression on the occupied West Bank began. At the Munich Security Conference, Commissioner General Philip Lazzarini warned of the agency's financial crisis an uncertain future, stressing its irreplaceable role. Meanwhile, Zionist settlers set fire to tents and attacked Palestinian vehicles in Al-Minya, southeast of Bethlehem, injuring 15, according to local officials. The African Union, at the close of its 38th summit in Addis Ababa, called for an immediate end to all normalization efforts with the Zionist entity. In its final statement, the Union condemned the war on Gaza, denouncing the occupation's violations of international law and attacks on civilians and infrastructure. African leaders also stressed the need to prosecute the Zionist entity internationally for committing genocide against the Palestinian people. And in Lebanon, the health ministry announced that the death toll from Zionist raids on southern towns has now risen to 5. A woman was killed and others injured by occupation fire in Hula Sunday, while 4 people were killed and 9, including 2 children, wounded in the night before the attack on 2 cars in the area of Tufah. Moving on, Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf reaffirmed Algeria's solidarity with Lebanon against the ongoing violations of its sovereignty. In a call with Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam, Attaf pledged Algeria's continued support, particularly through its role in the UN Security Council. According to the Algerian Foreign Ministry, both sides discussed developments in southern Lebanon, focusing on the ceasefire agreement and the withdrawal of Zionist occupation forces. And in a different development, Algeria affirmed the African Peer Review Mechanism's, or APRM, ability to drive meaningful change. Presenting the report of the 3rd Extraordinary Summit, Algerian Secretary of State for African Affairs Salma Bakta Mansouri expressed gratitude to APRM Forum members for their trust and support during Algeria's presidency of the Forum of Heads of State and Government.
As we need to take ownership of our union and its institution by ensuring the speedy implementation of the AU Agenda 2026, I would like to report that during the Head of States Forum, Algeria pledged $1 million as voluntary contribution to the APRM of an amount of $1 million.
In a similar note, Algeria and the African Peer Review Mechanism APRM signed a memorandum of understanding on Sunday to implement Algeria's voluntary $1 million financial contribution to the mechanism. According to the Algerian Foreign Ministry, the signing took place on the sidelines of the 38th African Union Summit in Addis Ababa. This contribution follows a decision by President Abdelmadjid Tebboune announced during his chairmanship of the 34th APRM Summit to support the mechanism's activities and programs.
اليوم قمت بالتوقيع مع السيدة المديرة التنفيذية للآلية الأفريقية للتقييم من
Today, I signed a memorandum of understanding with Her Excellency Marie-Antoinette Roscatre, Executive Director of the African Peer Review Mechanism, implementing President Abdelmadjid Tebboune's directive to provide a $1 million voluntary contribution in support of the mechanism. As the current chairperson of the Forum of Heads of State and Government of the APRM, President Tebboune reaffirmed his commitment to strengthening good governance and democracy in Africa, following the session in Addis Ababa on February 14.
Still with the African Union Summit, Comorian President Ghazali Ousmane urged African Union member states to unite in overcoming the legacy of colonialism and slavery. Speaking to our channel on the sidelines of the AU Summit, he emphasized the need for African-led solutions to security challenges and terrorism.
L'Afrique a besoin d'être réparée par la colonisation et l'esclavage. Africa must be restored from the lasting impacts of colonialism and slavery. While we remain committed to this struggle, our foremost priority is unity, standing together to address security challenges and terrorism, while strengthening ties with our partners. In this spirit of unity, we will seek dialogue with our adversaries with openness and a willingness to cooperate, striving to heal the historical injustices inflicted by colonialism and slavery.
The 38th African Union Summit in Addis Ababa provided a key platform for African leaders to address peace, security, institutional reforms, and strategic development, reinforcing regional cooperation and stability. Here's Zahra Farjani with more details.
In a resolute bid to cement Africa's place on the world stage, the 38th AU Summit wrapped up on Sunday in Addis Ababa, with African leaders doubling down on Agenda 2063, the continent's master plan for a prosperous future. At the heart of the discussions was a high-stakes dialogue on mobilizing African investment and financing, not just in theory, but through strategic partnerships and concrete action. Leaders tackled key financial levers, domestic resource mobilization, concessional financing and debt relief mechanisms, all crucial to fueling sustainable growth. Public-private partnerships emerged as a key player for infrastructure development, reinforcing Africa's drive for self-reliance.
Prosperity is driven by inclusive growth and sustainable development, integrated and politically united, rooted in Pan-Africanism and the vision of the African Renaissance, governed by democracy, justice, and the rule of law, with respect for human rights, peaceful and secure, rich in cultural identity, with a shared heritage, values, and ethics, people-centered in its development approach, a strong, united, and influential global player.
Beyond economics, this summit underscored the historic call for justice and reparations, a step toward healing past wounds and uniting Africans at home and across the diaspora.
Boosting domestic resource mobilization, securing concessional financing, implementing innovative strategies to ease debt burdens, expanding public-private partnerships to drive infrastructure development.
It seems that Agenda 2063 is indeed Africa's future, but vision alone won't move mountains. Now, it's time to turn ambition into action.
In another regional development, the Moroccan regime has escalating home demolitions and land seizures, granting property to Zionists who have infiltrated state institutions since the 2020 normalization. Meanwhile, the Makhzen continues its human rights violations, forcibly evicting Moroccans under false pretenses.
We condemn the state's continued policy of seizing communal lands and transferring them to capitalists, Zionists, and others, as well as the expropriation of small farmers' land and the demolition of workers' homes under the pretext of informal housing or for the construction of football stadiums and other facilities in preparation for hosting the Africa Cup of Nations and the 2030 World Cup.
And in the same context, the Moroccan Observatory for Combating Normalization slammed former Zionist envoy David Govrin for pushing the Makhzen to crack down on anti-normalization activists and pro-Palestine movements. At the same time, hundreds took to the streets in Tétouan, demanding an end to normalization and rejecting Trump's plan to seize Gaza and displace its people, warning of its dangerous impact on the region.
ولن تتوقف إلا بتحرير فلسطين كل فلسطين من البحر إلى النهر.
Moving on to another topical story, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio have agreed to continue preparations for a meeting between President Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. In a phone call, both officials expressed readiness to discuss pressing international issues, including the war in Ukraine, the situation in Palestine, and other regional matters. The Kremlin described the recent talks between President Putin and Trump as constructive and friendly, with spokesman Dmitry Peskov noting the positive atmosphere of their conversation.
You know, if we were in the mood of such a regular dialogue, in the mood of normal interstate relations, it would probably require less preparation. Although in any case, a meeting between the two presidents, and even more the presidents of the countries such as Russia and the United States, requires of course special efforts in terms of its preparation, drawing up an agenda, preliminary discussion, exchange of views at the working level, and so on.
Meanwhile, fighting in eastern Ukraine has escalated, with 261 clashes in 24 hours as Russian forces advance toward Pokrovsk. The attacks focused on a key logistics hub, marking a sharp rise from previous weeks. Meanwhile, Russia claims to have destroyed an American-made HIMARS launcher and downed 50 Ukrainian drones overnight. In response, Ukraine's Air Force reported intercepting 95 out of 143 Russian drones, targeting multiple regions. Still with the war in Ukraine, Poland this time has rejected a proposal by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to create a unified European army to counter Russian threats. Polish Foreign Minister said in an interview with state television broadcast late Saturday that European countries would not create a unified army and that his country would only support an initiative to form a reinforced military brigade under the umbrella of the European Union. Moving on in other news, in Africa, the M23 armed group seized control of Bukavu, the Democratic Republic of the Congo's second largest city, on Sunday. The group's spokesman told Reuters agency that fighters had stormed the city center as they advanced toward the capital of South Kivu province. And in reaction to this development, the African Union warned against the division of the Democratic Republic of the Congo after the M23 movement seized its second largest city. AU Peace and Security Commissioner Bankole Adeoye, speaking in Addis Ababa, emphasized respect for Congo's sovereignty and urged the armed group to withdraw immediately from all occupied areas, including Goma Airport.
We are expressing grave concern, that is what our leaders did, on the situation in Eastern DRC, calling for immediate withdrawal of M23 and their supporters from all occupied towns and cities, including Goma Airport. Second, it's very critical that our leaders also emphasize what is fundamental to every member state of the African Union, the preservation and total respect of the sovereignty, political unity, and territorial integrity of Democratic Republic of Congo.
Moving on to another national development this time, Algeria inaugurated Africa's largest milk factory on Saturday with a production capacity of 1.4 million liters per day. Located east of the capital, the project aims to boost food security and strengthen local milk production. Here's Yasin Orekti with the report.
With a massive capacity of 1.4 million litres per day, Africa's largest dairy unit was officially inaugurated in Riba, east of Algiers, by Gipley, marking a major leap towards self-sufficiency and cutting down imports. Agriculture Minister Youssef Sharfa hailed the project as a cornerstone of Algeria's food security strategy, reinforcing national dairy production and ensuring greater market stability.
This major project, part of the state's strategy to enhance food security, is a significant milestone for the dairy sector. It will help boost national production of the essential product.
Outfitted with state-of-the-art industrial technology, the factory has already undergone its first technical trials, paving the way for high-quality and competitively priced milk. Samah Lahlou, CEO of Gipley, emphasized that this milestone reflects Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboun's clear vision for economic resilience and national self-reliance.
This ambitious achievement reflects the clear vision of President Abdelmajid Tebboune. It is the result of relentless efforts to strengthen national food security, drive economic development, and achieve self-sufficiency in the dairy sector, ultimately putting an end to shortages. This project also reaffirms our strong commitment to advancing this vital sector in line with the directives of the country's top authorities.
Indeed, this ambitious project adds to Algeria's growing portfolio of strategic achievements, reaffirming the state's unwavering commitment to food security, sustainable development, and economic sovereignty.
And now it's time to catch up on other news stories making headlines around the globe in the News in Brief. Let's follow.
Sudanese Foreign Minister Ali Yusuf has denied allegations that the Sudanese army possesses or uses chemical weapons in the ongoing war. Speaking at the Munich Security Conference on Friday, Yusuf insisted that there is no evidence of any violations or breaches committed by the Sudanese army.
Nearly 20 people have died in a stampede on New Delhi railway station as crowds rushed to board trains heading to Kumbh Mela into a pilgrimage. Authorities have launched an investigation into the cause of the incident, which occurred Saturday night as pilgrims scrambled to board. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, who began his third term in January, launched a constitutional reform project on Sunday. The announcement coincided with the 206th anniversary of Angostura Congress. Maduro called for the explicit and full integration of communal, territorial, and popular power into the constitution.
Steel workers and officials fear the impact of new 25% tariffs imposed by U.S. President Donald Trump, set to take effect on March 12 on the port city of Pohang, that used to be South Korea's steel hub for decades, led by industry giant POSCO.
And with this, ladies and gentlemen, our program draws to a close. For more details or to catch up on parts you missed, our social media platforms are always under your service. From me and the rest of the team, thank you for tuning in. And until next time, have a good one.